Oh, all right. All right. Just got in from riding the Harley downtown Austin.
Nice.
Ayin here. Welcome to another exciting episode. You don't know, huh? So don't act like you do, because then something bad might happen to you. Tonight on the show we have Kevin Trimmel, who's been a guest on our show before. He's a young man who's rising up in popularity very quickly, not because that's what he's not that he's seeking popularity, but because of his information regarding the Secret Space Program is fundamental to the community. So let's see if we got him on it. Let's give old Kevin a call right here.
Where I see some monsters, I reckon where I see some freaks. I reckon where I see some monsters, I reckon them are Jesus freaks. I reckon hate some freaks. I reckon.
Kevin, are you with us? How are you doing, man? Awesome, man. Just got in from a bike ride, riding my Harley down there in downtown Austin. Thanks for making time to see me tonight.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad we could just do it on the fly. Sometimes that works better that way.
Yeah, perfect. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Well, I'm a Canadian, so we had Thanksgiving first weekend in October.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
yes, it was good.
Hopefully you had a good day off or something like that today. All right.
Yep.
Well, you know, we kind of had an introductory type deal in our first video. And for the listeners that don't know, Dave Merrill he's a man who's lives in the UK, of great stature. He's a very large man. He's very kind and gentle soul. But he's also been a warrior in many aspects. He's a talented musician. He's also been featured on the Basis Project a couple of times. He's been featured on this show as well. And he's in our group.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. He's made so much progress since that first Basis series interview. And I think eventually, if he continues on his healing path, I think eventually he'll get all his memories back eventually. And I would like to see him years from now sit down in an interview and just, like, you know what I mean? Like, go over this, like, boom, 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 boom. I think he'll get there.
Yeah, and he's definitely on a positive vibe. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So I remember KJ and Dave, and then from there, moving up on the timeline, they facilitated a portion of our training on Mars, and they outsourced the training to one of the Mars colonies, and it was as a facilitator, and because the Solar Warden Navy faction with the British Commonwealth allies. It's actually it's actually a fairly small operation. Like it's a skeleton crew, and they literally didn't have the resources and the personnel to fully train their cadets. At least not for the program I was in, because this was a communications program that was prepping us to interface via the entrainment with certain beings. This was a different program than the standard creating soldiers, creating technicians, and pilots, and that's all standard procedure, and they can pretty much train those people, already. But it's these other programs, just like at a lot of universities will have a campus in a different city. That specializes in like one or two programs, like a veterinarian program, right? It'll be in like another city. It's a different campus, but probably the same university. So what they had done with the Mars program, they sent us there to complete our program, and that was interesting because that got into more of the physical stuff. It had to do with Qigong swimming lessons. That was one of the major memories I have, where they had us jump in a pool of water. And you had to create this energy bubble around you, and there's an instructor that was giving you telepathic command, and you literally had to create using your psychic energy, these energy bubbles around you, like Qigong and Tai Chi in the water. And what it was the water was meant to kind of act like a medium, because it kind of mimicked fluidic space and got you to really be more mindful of the energy. Because you could literally make like almost like a ball in the water, right? And there's an aspect where they had us jump into this pool, and when we jumped into it, we realized that you couldn't get out of it. It was like a 10-foot drop at least with no ladders. So you jump in, and then you realize unless someone throws you a line, you're not going to get out of it. It's one of the more negative memories I have, because they wanted to see what our breaking point was in terms of how long we could stay afloat treading water. And the instructor was saying telepathically, like create the energy bubble. Imagine you're floating on a balloon of energy, like you're actually sitting on the universe itself, and that will keep you afloat. And it did. Like I was able to stay afloat for a really long time, but eventually what happened was I was tapped out of energy, and I did drown. And that's one of the unfortunate memories I have.
Did they have to revive you?
Yeah, they can easily revive you from drowning. As long as your brain is still intact, they can revive you from a lot of like injuries. But simple drowning, it's pretty easy for them to bring you back.
And I've heard this before. So everybody that tapped out before you did, they all drowned too and had to be brought back?
Actually, it was a game you couldn't win, because it didn't matter how. Even if you lasted a week treading water, they were just waiting until you drowned, and then they were trying to gauge how much psychic potential in a survival situation. They're testing the survival dynamics in people. Like, are you one of those people that are you gonna like literally keep channeling energy until you burn out like a light bulb, or are you just gonna give up hope, even though you still have more gas in the tank? Are you gonna give up hope before you actually hit empty? And it's interesting how a lot of people will, if they lose hope, they give up even though they have more gas in the tank.
Oh, yeah.
And you always have a little bit more gas in the tank. That's something I learned in the program. They always push us a little further, to just show us that, hey, you think you're done, you're not done.
And so the people that gave up hope, did they dissociate?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what was going through their mind. I mean, I was in the zone. I was trying to survive myself. But I know that some people started to panic, and they weren't doing the energy work, and they were just using brute strength. They're literally just starting to panic and like trying to climb up the walls and sliding down the slippery, wet walls. I mean, this underground pool, it must have been fed by an underground spring under the Martian surface, because it was this massive cavern with these big steps going down into this pool, and it looked like it was built by giants. It looked like it would have been a swimming pool made by giants.
Yeah, and that's why y'all couldn't get out, because one of their steps was like a wall for y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So there's that. And then on Mars 2, they transferred us to another Mars colony that was actually run by the Templars. So they had now they didn't have the Red Cross on them. They just had the white like tunic-looking gowns. but that stands out in my mind because they were Templars, absolutely, and they were teaching remote viewing, and they were in these white gowns, the instructors, and which is very odd, being in a high-tech Mars colony facility, and people are dressed in like medieval-looking clothing. So it stands out in my mind.
Yeah.
But that was their tradition. They're part of the secret society of the Templars, and the ones that are on Mars, they had this remote viewing program. They were amazing at it. They could, it was a little different than the standard SRV scientific remote viewing that Courtney Brown, the Farsight Institute. It was very similar to that, but there was a different thing. And what it was they would give you a drug. And what it was I've been asked this a lot, like, did they give you a hallucinogen like LSD? And it's like, no, it wasn't that kind of drug. You'd have a spotter, like one of these people in this gown, I guess, and you'd have just a piece of paper with a pencil, and they'd write down numbers, symbols, coordinates, okay? And they'd give you this drug, and they'd keep getting you to focus on the paper. And what it was you get these waves of euphoria, like you're getting hit with like waves of serotonin, and if they got you to concentrate on the coordinates, as this wave hit you, you would get an insight. And it's not that you heard voices, it's not that you hallucinated, it was an inner knowing. It was like an intuition that was like that, like you just got this insight on the coordinates, and you would start talking and describing what those coordinates actually were. So it was a form of remote viewing because you're describing a location or a past event. But you're not seeing it as in like astral projecting, getting out of body, and actually, viewing it that way. It was strange. It was like this, like you're peeking, and then you're like, you get this like eureka moment, and you're like, that's what that is, like, and it's really bizarre.
Wow, that is bizarre.
Yeah.
Now,
so those are the two that stand out.
The people that were wearing like the medieval type clothes, have they lived on Mars their whole life?
I'm not sure. I mean, they only tell you what you're supposed to know, right? But I know that the inner circle of basically the inner circle families of the Illuminati, if you want to call them that, the Templars are just like the Masons. They're one of those major secret societies that the inner families are a part of, and the Templars. If you look at their history, if it's true that they raided Solomon's temple. They got access to a lot of the ancient mystery school knowledge, and they've been able to develop it in a way that even in modern times is very useful. And that basically what I'm trying to say is they're good at psychic warfare. They're good at gathering intelligence using various remote viewing methods, so they can know everything about a target, before they even send someone to interrogate them or whatever. Like they know that you're sitting at your kitchen table eating a bowl of cereal at 2 p.m. or something, and they know what the color of the shirt you're wearing. And with that level of intel, it's pretty easy to not only track people but also abduct people.
And that's of course been the connection throughout history between magic, quote unquote magic, and war and royalty and stuff like that. This idea that you had wizards that would tell you enemy movements and stuff like that. And of course, that's very real.
Yeah, and so while we're on this topic, it kind of ties into the Masons and other secret societies.
For instance, most of the viewers know that I'm a member of the OTO, and of course, there's not very much that I can say about that. But I will tell y'all, I'm on the lower levels where I don't know, I'm not privy to this type of information that Kevin's talking about.
Well, what's interesting is like the OTO is another one. These secret societies. Why are these ancient secret societies involved with a modern-day secret space program? And the answer is because these secret societies have kept these ancient mystery school teachings of how to basically wage psychic warfare, and also how to ascend or reach an ascended state, which has to do with passing from third density consciousness, 60 to 70 megahertz, and then there's techniques or protocols within these mystery school teachings that can actually raise your megahertz level and kind of get you on equal footing with these fourth density beings. So that's why something like the Templars would be involved in a secret space program colony on Mars, because they have abilities that allow them to interface with these beings.
Of course, yeah. And so, since the very beginning, they were, involved with non-human intelligences. It's basically, what seems to be the end game of these type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so that was the training. Pretty much, I remember, and one of the big incidents, it happened in 2011, and I feel like this was shortly after my training. It was like my first real assignment, and it was to be an ET interface. And what it was there's this conference, and it was on a space station between the Earth and Mars, and this was the Nordics held this conference for one of their craft. And they had two representatives from two different Mars colonies that were affiliated with each other. Then they had representatives from the Solar Warden personnel. And what it was one of the colonies on Mars in the northern hemisphere had been attacked by what appeared to be drone craft, but it was they were able to determine that it was a reptilian subspecies, a rogue reptilian subspecies that had invaded our solar system, had attacked a colony on the northern hemisphere of Mars as a scouting mission to see what our reaction would be. What they also found was that the Solar Warden craft, a lot of them, because Solar Warden operates primarily within the solar system as like the Coast Guard air traffic control of the solar system, a lot of their craft at that time had sublight engines, so they were not able to travel faster than the speed of light, because that's actually not really necessary for our solar system. It's also extremely dangerous. You can't, for lack of a better term, you can't go to warp in a solar system typically, because what will happen is it can affect the orbits of the planets, the actual gravitational fields of the planet. So what will often happen is they will come out of warp on the edge of the solar system. That's standard protocol for safety reasons. And then from there they'll travel at near light speeds through the solar system. So a lot of the Solar Warden craft were not faster than light capable, craft. These are craft that are operating in the cislunar space around Mars, and actually the Solar Warden primarily operates within the inner solar system. They will send some what they consider long-range craft beyond the asteroid belt. But even beyond the asteroid belt, there's the ET presence increases much more so. And also, too, there's already, I'm not going to talk about it now, but there's already a presence on Venus. So they don't have to monitor the air traffic around Venus. There's already a presence there.
What is keeping that? Is there something that's keeping these a massive alien species or whatever coming within the solar system? Or is the Solar Warden protecting the solar system?
Well, here's the negative implication of Solar Warden. On one side, they're stopping these ET interlopers from coming in, attacking us, stealing resources, stealing people, stealing genetics, and all the rest of it, because we will get the riffraff that are like poachers, and they will come here and they will just like strip mine a planet or abduct people for slaves, and they'll leave again. So they are keeping those at bay. But the problem is, well, why? And the reason is because they want you to establish a treaty with them. And they have all these trade agreements where these ETs are able to travel to Mars primarily and do trade with various elements of the Secret Space Program. So you have to, or if you want to pass through our solar system, you have to establish a treaty with them. So these rogue elements, I mean, they're the renegades, so they're not going to sit down at a conference and work out a deal. They're pirates. That's what I'm getting at. They're true, like it's piracy. So the true pirates out there that remain, it's just like in the golden age of piracy. They're just raiding. They're raiding our solar system. So once in a while they'll make it in, and because some of these beings are extremely advanced. And so this race, what it was there's a massive carrier. I just saw this on a holographic screen that came up out of the table. It was, you got Mars, Northern Hemisphere, and then there's these drone craft coming out of a carrier. And they look like buzzing bees, or wasps on the footage, like buzzing around the space. And they're explaining that the Solar Warden craft were too outdated to keep up with these drone craft. Basically, these drone craft could fly circles around the TR3 very, very easily. And also to chase them out of the solar system, we would need faster craft to pursue them. And it was one of the first times Solar Warden actively was going to push this armada out and pursue them beyond the, or at least to the Oort cloud, which requires, once you get far enough out, to chase them, to keep up to them like a cop car. You need faster than light capability. So long story short about this conference, what it was the Nordics held this conference. It was just a formality. The Nordics controlled this faction of the Secret Space Program, the Navy faction. It was just a formality, and that's what I mean by this joint effort space program. Really, we're being parented and co-managed by these ET beings. So we have the illusion that we're in control, but they always had this veto, and the veto happened in this conference. And what it was these two Mars colonies, they did not want to hand over free upgrades to the Navy because there's no incentive in it for them. They're highly competitive on Mars. You have all these, it's the inner circle nobility families around the world, all the billionaires. They have these Mars colonies, and they have these advanced research and development like facilities where they're doing trade with extraterrestrials and sometimes with each other. And what it is just like the tech sector, like Apple and Microsoft, they compete with each other very heavily because they're doing trade with ETs for technology. And so what happened was the Nordics were trying to say to these two Mars colonies, like, hey, like, you're all humans and you're in trouble here, so just give them the upgrades so that the Solar Warden can do their real job and chase these people out of the solar system. And to the astonishment of the Nordics, these two Mars colonies, one of which had been attacked, still were resistant, saying we're not giving them access to our upgrades. Just like, but I understand, if you understand the tech sector, it's like imagine, like, even in a crisis, Apple saying to Microsoft, yeah, you got to give us everything you got going on right now because it's World War III and we need this upgrade. And you'd be surprised. I bet even in a World War III situation, Microsoft might still be like, you know what, I don't want to give you, what we're secretly working on here to be competitive. So anyway, that's what happened. And then long story short, the Nordics just said, they did the veto, and they said, no, you are actually you're going to give them the upgrades. And they upgraded some of the Solar Warden craft, and that group got pushed out, chased out of the solar system. It happened in two waves. The first was they set up this blockade between the Earth and Mars, and they just made it clear that we were going to fight and that we had the upgrades to fight. So this armada started to back off, and then the phase two of it was we actually pursued, and then beyond the Oort cloud, they left, and we were pursuing, and then we turned back, obviously. And but yeah, we needed faster than light capability because for them, from their perspective, from this armada's perspective, we were playing with Tinker toys. Like it was almost like a World War I era submarine going up against a nuclear sub today. We were just so outclassed at that point. But this secret tech sector on Mars, they had amazing upgrades, like 3, 4, 5 times the speed of light, which we are, as mammalian oxygen breathers, we actually are able to travel faster than the speed of light. There's certain races that can't travel beyond the speed of light due to their biology.
Wow, I never contemplated that, but we're one that can.
Yeah, we're one that can. Mammalians can travel 3, 4, and I've heard even 5 times faster than the speed of light. I mean, there still has to be shielding involved, but it's just our physiology can handle it. What
about reptilians?
Reptilians can too, but I've heard that there's certain species that have very limited. They're very advanced, but they have very limited contact with other races, and it's because their physiology, they can travel at near light speeds, but they can't travel faster than the speed of light. Their physiology isn't able to handle it, and those are very isolated species that don't have a lot of contact.
Okay, so here's a quick question: if the human being, exists on several different dimensions at the same time, the average person on the street or whatever, is this what you'd consider fourth density, or is that third density? What is that?
Well, I know that there's a lot of confusion about this because, density and dimension is actually two different things here.
Yeah.
But when I mean by density, I'm talking about the vibratory states of matter, physical matter, and everything has a megahertz level. So once you get past the 350 megahertz level, that's where you start getting to what I'm talking about, this fourth density of vibration.
Okay.
Where you're just resonating at such a high frequency compared to someone resonating at like 60 megahertz. It's like that person at 60 megahertz seems almost like an inanimate object in terms of the energy coming off of them compared to a being resonating at 500 megahertz. It's like, whoa.
So is density like a subgroup of dimension? Or they're not the same, but they're related? What's the relationship between density and dimension?
Well, I don't really know too much about other dimensions. There is like the lower astral, that Tim Reith has rightfully
lower Deva
called
Chan, upper Deva Chan. You're right. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. Like the complex number space, that would be the ethereal, and so that would be considered like another dimension.
Now this,
go ahead.
Sorry. Well, you mentioned this complex number
yeah.
space. That reminds me of Tim Reith. Are you, I guess, familiar with his work?
Yeah. Tim Reith. So what I like is he put it into scientific terms because what most people when they say astral projection, right, like the New Age, like astral projection, when you're sleeping, you're out of body, you're in your light body, and you're communicating. Like that's complex number space, as he calls it. It's not the physical. It's the parallel energetic reality that overlays physical matter, and that would be considered another dimension. When I'm talking about density, I'm referring to like the physical. It's a physical. It has physicality to it. Okay. Complex number space doesn't have physicality to it.
Okay, so when these things that are of the different densities, can several beings be in the same density, but one be invisible to another because it's at a different vibration?
Yeah. Like once you understand vibration, this is how the Americans were able to create super soldiers that could go through walls. This is where the teleportation thing, Project Pegasus, and all that came from, because they realized that obviously we perceive the macro world as solid, but on a subatomic level, nothing's solid, and you can pass through something at the right frequency.
We hear, and I think interdimensional might be the wrong word, but we hear that many stories of these Bigfoot creatures are somehow able to disappear and stuff like that. Is that because they're operating at a different frequency than we are?
Absolutely, yeah. Like what people think of as Sasquatch is a very high density. And what I mean by density, still physical, just resonating at such a high megahertz those beings are incredibly advanced. Like we're talking like 8th density. So I can't even guess what their megahertz level is, but they can walk through walls. They can be standing in front of you and you could look right through them, like nothing's there. Like we're very limited in what we can perceive.
Now, of course, you're in Canada. We get the idea that there's lots of Bigfoot in Canada. We've always, been led to believe that, but now we're finding out there's a lot of them right here in Texas.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
What I've come to understand is because our planet, due to the biodiversity, it's one of those planets that's considered one of these genetic gardens or storehouses of diversity. So they literally come here the same way people who like naturalists that go to the Galapagos Islands or to look at the wildlife in a beautiful place like the South Pacific. They come here to enjoy nature, and sometimes they'll communicate with higher consciousness humans, but they're primarily here to enjoy the actual natural world, and that's why they take on the Sasquatch form, is because they can exist in raw nature, and they don't even need to build a fire, because they're capable of living literally off the land in that animalistic, like, Sasquatch body. But that's as I've come to understand it, that's actually like a doll body. It's like it's a higher density consciousness that's using that body.
Like as an avatar.
As a spacesuit.
Wow.
So it can exist in raw nature and operate and enjoy the wildlife of our planet as a great ape. And but the consciousness is highly advanced, higher density, or dimensional rather, consciousness, but in a high density body, which is the Sasquatch body. This is where it gets confusing, dimension density. So it's a physical density, eighth density body that is being used as a spacesuit by
wow. It's almost like that movie Avatar, that they're kind of, it's like kind of like it's their avatar or something.